our next guest on twitter.com/DaveSimonMMA. And you can check him out at ringsidereport.net. Mr. Dave Simon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big fights coming up. 2 weeks from UFC 154 at the Bell Center. George St-Pierre, Carlos Condit.
That's as big as it gets in terms of, I guess, for you, right? It's local MMA. It's big stuff.
It's as big as it gets for the sport. George St-Pierre is the number one pay-per-view draw in the sport. He's
After a
returning.
long layoff, yeah.
He hasn't fought since April of 2011 when he had 50,000 plus people watching him beat Jake Shields in Toronto. And now he fights Carlos Condit, the interim champion. Saw George work out this past week. Looked very sharp. His kicks looked absolutely nasty. He looks ready to go.
In terms of that long layoff, obviously that only helps to hype up something like this. Dave, you and I were talking off air about an article recently about how the ticket sales aren't as crazy successful as they've been in the past. But, in the past, that's also been just alarmingly good. So it's hard to compare it to, something that was just out of this world. Now it's just fantastic as opposed to out of this world. But are they doing enough to hype this event? Are they pushing this thing enough?
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of hype for this event. I think a lot of people are seeing the advertising around the city for George St-Pierre. I think that there are a number of factors that go into this. We've had a lot of events here in Montreal. Maybe that's why it hasn't sold out as quickly as some might have expected. And
a lot of concerts lately.
A lot of UFC events you're talking about?
No, just in general. You said events. We've had a lot of events.
I was talking about UFC shows. I didn't mean...
I see what you're saying. I thought you meant just general people going out, different events, Montreal, spending money.
Yeah, but there are also fewer hockey games to spend your money on, so you figure...
Well said.
A good reason to go to the Bell Center to go see George St-Pierre, right? So, it's a little bit surprising, but I think they will sell out come November 17th. I think maybe they haven't sold out that quickly because the undercard is not as compelling as some undercards have been in the past. Although, I think if you look at it from a fighting perspective, you really have some great fights being put together. But Martin Kampmann and Johnny Hendricks as the co-main event, maybe not the biggest names in the sport. Maybe next to George St-Pierre and Carlos Condit, you don't have that marquee fight where... everybody's going to recognize the names. I'll actually have Johnny Hendricks and Martin Kampmann, the co-main event, both guys on the show this Wednesday night.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Yeah,
now, are they going to fight?
No. We spoke to them on the phone.
All right.
And it's separate, so they're not going to fight each other before the actual fight. They only do that when they get paid. What's the point?
Yeah, no, that's fair. What are you expecting to hear from these guys? Are these low-key guys? Are they, talkers? What kind of guys are we talking about here?
Hendricks and Kampmann?
Yeah,
they're interesting guys that like to talk, and I think it'll be good stuff from both of them. I also have Patrick Cote. I spoke with Patrick this week, and we'll air that.
Predator.
Yeah, that's right. He'll be fighting a big fight against Alessio Sakara at UFC 154. It's the first time in several years that George St-Pierre and Patrick Cote will be fighting on the same card. Which is pretty cool for Montreal MMA. A lot of Montreal fighters on this card. I had John McDessie on the show this week. He's going to be fighting on the card, so a lot of Montreal fighters at 154.
You mentioned Cote, and I guess at this point in his career, he's kind of a fringe UFC guy. He's in, he's out. How big is this fight for him?
I think it's huge.
Is this career defining? Is this like, this is it? If he loses, he's, off the map? Is it, if he wins, he's right in contention? I mean, what does it mean?
Yeah, if he wins, I don't think it puts him in contention. He's fighting Alessio Sakara. Beating Alessio Sakara is not going to put you in the mix as far as the middleweight title, but a loss to Alessio Sakara, I think, would be dangerous territory for him. He's been released from the UFC before. He came back. He fought Kung Lee. A lot of people, I think, were expecting him to beat Kung Lee. He lost via decision, and now a second straight loss for Cote would be difficult, and I don't know if the UFC would keep him around after that. I think that he will come into this fight against Sakara as the favorite. I think he will win the fight, but it's a huge fight for him, and it's a fight he needs to win.
Chatting some MMA with Dave Simon of Ringside Report Radio. Dave, is there any match that you're looking forward to on this card that maybe people aren't talking about at all? Maybe like an unheralded, a lower division in terms of, weight class, that kind of thing, where you're thinking, this this could be a fight of the night contenders. People know, obviously, that Dana White gives that bonus.
We're talking about UFC 154 here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of good fights on this card, and a lot of fights that I think could impress a lot of people. I mentioned that John McDessie fight. He's fighting Sam Stout, two guys that love to strike, and they're very exciting strikers, and it's an old-school type battle of Quebec versus Ontario. We see it a lot here on the local circuit, and then we're seeing Sam Stout, an Ontario guy, against McDessie from Laval. I think that's an interesting fight, and I think it's going to be a really good fight. And Sam Stout is a guy who pretty much takes home fight of the night every time he goes out into the octagon. So I could see that being fight of the night and one of the fights of the year, quite frankly. I think it's going to be very, very good. Antonio Carvalho taking on Rodrigo Dam, I think will be a tremendous fight. Two very good featherweights there. And I'm looking forward to seeing newcomer and undefeated fighter Azamat Gashimov. He'll be fighting Montreal fighter Ivan Menjivar in the bantamweight division. That on the preliminary card. This guy, Azamat, I think is 22 years old, undefeated. Should be interesting to see what he has, and he's going to be fighting a very tough guy in Ivan Menjivar. So this card, very, very interesting from top to bottom. But, as we said, maybe doesn't have that name value that a lot of people are looking at, but it's got some great fights, and of course, headlined by the biggest name in the sport in George St-Pierre.
We also have a UFC event coming up in China.
Yeah, UFC on Fuel TV 6 going down in 6 days on Saturday night. It'll actually take place very early in the morning, as the first fight scheduled for 7:15 in the morning on Saturday. I don't know what I'm going to do for that, but I guess I'll have to wake up very early on Saturday to watch the fights in Macau, China. Rich Franklin taking on Kung Lee in the main event of that. Stanislav Nedkov, an undefeated fighter out of Bulgaria, taking the very tough Thiago Silva in a light heavyweight contest. Donghyun Kim taking on Paulo Thiago. That should be a very good welterweight fight. Mac Danzig faces Takanori Gomi. It's an interesting card here in Macau.
They're stocking up the Asian fighters, obviously, for a China card.
Yes, and of course the only Chinese fighter on the UFC roster, Tiquin Zhang, will be on this card taking on John Tuck. So, they're definitely bringing in a lot of the Asian fighters for this Macau fight, and it's a big deal for MMA. It's a big deal for the UFC, their first event in China.
Is it a situation where they were waiting for approval or sanction or anything like that, or it was always sort of MMA is licensed or it's allowed there?
Well, there's always a lot of red tape in China. You always have to deal with different things, and you have to deal with the government and getting all the legal things in order before you go there. And that's what the UFC was dealing with for a little while. I mean, I think China was an idea that they had, and they went for it, and now they're finally going to do it. It's in Macau, which isn't exactly like doing a show in Beijing. Macau is what's called a special administrative region of China.
It's a very big gaming area.
Yeah, exactly. So it's in China, but it's not quite China.
Yes.
Right, and it's going to be.
We kind of have an area like that near Montreal, so we're well aware of it here in this region.
Yeah, it's not quite China. It's a lot of casinos and stuff, but it's technically a part of China. So it's the first step for the UFC. I think eventually they're going to want to go into what's known as mainland China and Beijing and stuff like that.
He is Dave Simon. You can check out more at ringsidereport.net. And again, the two fighters you're going to have on this week, Dave?
We'll have Johnny Hendricks. We'll have Martin Kampmann. We'll also have Patrick Cote. And
Wednesday night.
Yeah, Wednesday night we'll have Hendricks and Kampmann. Friday night we'll have Patrick Cote.